Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Meghan Green, and I am part of the Global Events team at SAP. I'm also a member of the Sustainability and Social Impact Committee at the Event Industry Council, and I am thrilled today to be joined by my guest, Tiffany Eck from Visit Denver, to walk through her incredible journey to certification of the Sustainable Events Standards. So welcome, Tiffany, and why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Great. Thanks so much, Megan. I appreciate you having me today. I am Tiffany Eck. I'm the Associate Director of Destination Services at Visit Denver. And then I also wear the hat of overseeing the sustainability efforts here at Visit Denver, which is something that I've kind of been doing since probably about 2008, 2009.
Very good, very good. And again, incredible congratulations on your recent certification to the Sustainable Events Standards. And I'm hoping that we can just talk through how it began, how it went, what went great, what was hard, and some success and failures and how you made it to where you are today. So why don't you tell us, first of all, kind of where Visit Denver was on their sustainability journey when you started?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we've kind of been following this, our own journey, if you will, for many years. Visit Denver applied for those standards, and the first time we actually received a certification for the sustainable event work in the industry was back in 2013, and that was also for destinations. So at that time, the certifications looked a little bit different. Right now, the system is a point-based system, very similar to if those who are familiar with LEED certification. So you can achieve the different levels based on how many points you can accumulate. Whereas back then, it was considered a level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And you had to meet almost every criteria or a bulk of these criteria in order to advance to the next level. So the unique thing about the destination standard, even when it was the APEX standards, ASTM standards, as well as the EIC Sustainable Events Standards, is that for destinations, it's not only what your CVB DMO is doing, it also applies to what your city is doing. So you have to build some sort of a relationship with your city. So we are fortunate to have an Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency here in Denver. And so there's a partnership with that department. But in addition, it's what are their municipality partners doing? So your Excel Energy, so your energy company, for us, Denver Water, so your water company in your cities is important because there are metrics under energy and water, for example, that apply to the city, and those are the entities that manage that. So I would say that the standards, have changed quite a bit in what is required, but our journey started long ago in 2013, and then has continued, and we were the first destination to achieve the level 2 certification under the APEX standards in 2015. And then we're super excited to see that the EIC took this over and how the standards have evolved and are also much more recognized now than I think they ever were, 10 years ago.
That's incredible. That's a very long journey, and I'm guessing you're still not done, right? Like just because you get certified doesn't mean that the journey ends there. But what would you recommend when you're first getting started? How do you recognize sort of your low-hanging fruit, right? Like you commit with your leadership to get started, and you want some easy wins right out of the gates. How do you identify what those are and use them as momentum to kind of start you moving forward?
I think you touched on a really important thing there, Megan, is a keyword is leadership. So I think that is the number one thing that I would recommend for any organization that is going down this journey. You have to have your leadership buy-in because it requires you to put new policies in place, have new communications, new programs, and your leadership has to be on board with it. So you can't just be off on your own island saying, I want to do this, I want to do this because it could make our organization better. You have to have everybody buying in from the top so that they can support you in all the decisions that you're making, because sometimes ultimately you are having to make some system changes, maybe to your websites, your employee handbooks, etc., to meet some of the criteria that are, in these certifications. And as I mentioned, I think there's been a lot of progress with the way that the standards are now written. And a key element that they've added is what is referred to as the foundation, the foundations, really. So the foundations are really important because no matter what sector you are in, so if you happen to be listening to this and you're an accommodation, the foundation standards apply to you as well. So every standard needs to meet a certain thing. So to me, low-hanging fruit would be things like, I think most organizations should have a code of conduct, right? Great. That's a fairly simple checkbox that you can check off in one of the requirements of the foundations. But some of the things that I think most organizations are doing is the, DEI statements is something that is required, but it needs to be public. So, taking that kind of self-awareness and saying, well, yes, we have a policy, but is it on our website? Is it available for anybody to see, to have that transparency? So that I think is important. So that's some of that low-hanging fruit. And then I think one of the best things any organization that can do that is kind of starting this journey of self-evaluation is having a green team, because they can get together and have like-minded interests for maybe themselves and or the organization, and can really help. So it's not just one person perhaps doing all the work, and you can really start to get momentum when you get more minds together to create maybe different policies, awareness, education for your staff and or your stakeholders.
I love that, having a whole team of people, because I'm guessing that there's a fair amount of work that needs to be done up front to first present to your leadership, right? What do you need to do to even get to the point where you're speaking to them in terms that make sense and are actionable, and the next step is simply to make sure that you're getting their buy-in? How much work does that take from the point at which you and your core team commit to presenting it to your leadership and actually getting it to the point where you can put it in front of them and get buy-in?
Yeah, it does take a lot of work. And I will say that I am extremely fortunate that my organization also realizes that sustainability is not my full-time job. And it is a lot of work to keep on top of everything and making sure that you're up to date with all your different metrics. So I am fortunate in that our leadership has realized that, and we do have a sustainability consultant. So I would say if your organization has the financial resources and bandwidth, it would be great to bring on a sustainability consultant, because what they did for us is they kind of did what I would say is a gap analysis. So they can sit through and say, hey, well, let's start with just foundations. They'll say, okay, well, it looks like you have all these things, but one of the main criteria of and I think any sustainability journey needs to have a sustainability and social impact plan. And that's one of the foundational elements of this standard. And so that's a big word, and that's a big term. And what does that mean? And what does that entail? And it can look different for every organization. But I didn't know how to write a sustainability policy. So our consultant helped us write a sustainability policy that's relevant and tangible to Visit Denver and makes sense for us, because what makes sense for us, isn't always going to make sense for every organization. So that's part of that sort of sustainability plan is getting your sustainability policy. We now have a procurement policy, putting in place like how we're making purchases and making sure that we are trying to adhere to a certain level of percentage of our purchases by cost, meet a certain criteria. Well, that's not easy. That's not my bailiwick. I don't know how to get there, but that's where they can really help us. And then every year we add to that plan. And so I think these standards also, what is pretty cool is that when you start to see certain line items, because it's really a line item, it's a checklist, but there's such great guidelines, but you can say, gosh, we are not doing that. A couple examples that I would share would be foundationally. One of the foundational requirements and a big change throughout the development of the standards is really that involvement and increase of having human trafficking, social impact, DE&I as a part of these standards, because that really is kind of encompassing, in sustainability, where those elements were not perhaps included 10 years ago in these event standards. So Visit Denver did not do human trafficking training. That is required. So it could potentially be a low-hanging fruit for some organizations because you might be doing it. But what we did is I found a local organization and we had them come and we presented to our staff. We did a webinar, and it was a great conversational 45 minutes, learning kind of about the impacts and how our industry really impacts and plays a role, in human trafficking. And then it's something you have to do annually. So if you want to mix it up, I know for Visit Denver, our platform for reporting time is through ADP. And I know a lot of organizations use companies such as ADP or something similar, but they have a whole series of educational, sessions that you can take, and they have a 15-minute session on human trafficking with a little quiz at the end. So that's what we're going to do, this year for my organization. So I think, sometimes those are ways to get you to think outside the box. As we were going through the standards, you get a checklist and you think, okay, I might be able to make this certification level. And then as we went through, I was like, oh gosh, like I'm so close to platinum. Like, how do I get there? What is it that I need to do? And if I just did these few things, I could get myself over that edge. So, I worked with my sustainability consultant. We've never done a sustainability dedicated annual report. That was something that came out of going through these standards, as we now came up with one for 2022, and I'm in the processing of editing it and getting it out and putting it live for 2023. So I think these standards are just great ways to make sure you're just always making sure that you are taking yourself to the next level, thinking outside the box, or how can you push yourself to do more?
That's so true. And I love the way you point out that like a strength for one organization might be a blind spot for another, right? Like everybody is going to look at the document, and it's human nature. You're going to make a mental checklist in your own mind of like, oh yeah, easy, I can do that. We're already doing this, we're already doing that. But there must for everybody be a couple of line items that you're just like, oof, like I don't even know where to start on that one. And it sounds like from what you said that you feel like there's resources that you can use to get the support to help you get out of the gates on those really difficult ones.
Yeah, and then some just may not be attainable, I mean, there's just certain things that just might not, at least at the time that you're there, I think we're not even at this level, but something that we don't make a checkbox for is we don't right now provide financial incentives for sustainable groups to come to Denver. Maybe that's something we would consider into the future, but that's not something that we are currently doing. And so, it makes you think like, well, maybe we should be doing something, but that's a very big conversation, right? That's just not something you can say, let me put this together and tie it up in a bow in 30 days. That's a very strategic conversation that we are now having discussions at the leadership level to say, is this something that we want to do? But it's not going to happen overnight.
It's so true. It's so true. So, I mean, what advice would you give people who are just feeling like it's so overwhelming to even get started? They have the buy-in, they think they can convince their leadership, but they need to get themselves more organized, need to come up with a plan and need to just take that first step to put one foot in front of the other. Like, what advice would you give to people in that boat?
Start small. I think, as I've mentioned, those foundations are great. That's your launch pad, right? Like, get those elements in place. And as you start to think about all the things that you are already doing, you might not even realize that you're doing a lot of things, especially for destinations and DMOs. We're marketing organizations. We don't own anything. Everything that we do is promoting, whether it's city assets or partner assets. And so maybe it's just actually thinking about what are your partners already doing, and how can you tell that story, or what are the things that you're commonly getting asked and you're always having to research? Could you make that more turnkey? Because then when it's more turnkey and it's public, utilize the sort of checklist to say, well, we have that resource, but maybe let's make it public, that so everybody can find it, that it's easy, or you're not always reinventing the wheel. Some examples that I would give of that is CSR is a huge thing that meeting planners are asking for when they come to destinations. So we used to keep just a separate list, but instead, we put it on our website. It's live, it's transparent, and that's an easy thing now. They say, do you have this? Yes, here's the link to website. I don't have to go, is a document updated? And then, it's part of your auditing process. We have to audit the website. So making sure that those organizations are still relevant, up to date. But then I also find that people find that organically and then say, hey, how do I get on this list? So that's a nice way when things are public, it's out there for more people to find and or perhaps participate in.
Absolutely. Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's so encouraging to know if you can do it, others can do it. We're all, the key word is it's a journey, right? Like wherever you are on your journey, just keep moving forward. And I think I'm super excited to hear what's next for you guys. Like what's still on your hit list of things that you haven't quite achieved yet from a sustainable perspective that you're hoping to move forward with your organization?
Gosh, I think we're doing a lot of really great things, but you can always do more. One of the nice things is that for the DMOs, they don't necessarily look at it used to be as part of the standards, what's the energy in your building and different things. And it's hard for us right now because we are in a very old building and literally within the next month are going to be moving into a newer building because ours is no longer going to be a commercial building space. But that brings through opportunities of, as we were looking at, building that out, what are things from an energy efficiency, water conservancy that we were putting into those elements of building out our new office. And one of the ones we're pushing really hard under new building management is composting. I've been trying to get composting within our office for years, and it's just we've run into so many roadblocks. But I think we're taking the opportunity of moving into a new building and saying, how can we be more efficient in all of these different things? And hopefully, we're working hard with the building to try to get composting within our office, which I think would just be huge. And our staff even asks about it, so they ask about how come we don't ever have composting in the office, or when are we going to be able to get that? And so I'm hoping we can break that hurdle when we move offices.
So awesome. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing what you cook up next. So
thank you so much, and best of luck to everyone. And as Megan said, it's a journey, so take it one step at a time.
Thanks, Tiffany. Speak soon.
Okay.